Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee meeting of Friday, February the 18th of 2022. Present are myself, Doug Case, the chair of the ad hoc committee. We have Brandon Hilpert, who is the chair of the commission. We have a commission member and committee member, Diana Dent. We have Kate Yavandetti from Women Occupy, who is our liaison with San Diegans for Justice. We have Charmaine Mosley, our interim executive director. We have Elena Conde, who is our executive assistant. And we have Robin Resendez, who is our complaint coordinator.
Elena, can you start sharing the agenda? Thank you.
Yeah, let me just pull it up.
And Charmaine, I got a couple of emails. They were dated yesterday, but they didn't appear in my email box until this morning. Anyway, so if I missed something, let me know. Or some of the emails that we're going back and forth.
Yes, the draft for next Tuesday's meeting.
Okay, yeah. And so anyway, I'll look at that. I had to change my password yesterday, so I'm not sure. Maybe that made a difference. I don't know. So if you can go ahead and scroll down on the agenda. And do we have any public comment?
No public comment received.
Okay. And I don't believe we have any update on the budget process unless Charmaine's heard something.
No update. I believe, well, let me just go back. I believe it's going to be going through the post evaluation right now. So I'll let you know.
Okay. And then on the staffing, we met with HR last week to find out about the ability to use their citywide executive search firm for the deputy executive director search. And they were going to get back to Charmaine this week. And I think I saw an email regarding that, but I didn't get a chance to read it yet, Charmaine. So what's the status of that?
I'm still waiting for a response. So just following up with them.
Okay. And so our plan is they only have a limited number of searches they can use. And if they say we can't do that, then we'll proceed with our original plan of preparing a RFP, which you already have prepared information for. To do an executive search for that position. The implementation ordinance, we'll talk about that more on the agenda. And I did get a text from Charmaine this morning saying that the interim standard operating procedures amendment, which is the one that regarding review of OIS cases, will be heard at PSNLN on April the, was it 26th?
27th.
27th. And that was the earliest date that they could get it scheduled because they're not meeting in March and have full agendas between then. Nothing new on office space, unless Charmaine said anything.
No, I think we're reaching the end stages of trying to get that invoice approved for Gensler to go ahead and do the schematic plans.
And nothing new on standing rules or community outreach. The legal counsel contract, I did see a text this morning saying that they are working to see if we can bypass the committee process and go directly to the city council and get it on a consent agenda. You want to give us a further update if you have anything, Charmaine?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Okay, yeah, for the legal contract for outside counsel. If I read your text correctly, they are going to try to get it agendized directly at the city council rather than having to go through committee.
Yes.
And hopefully it will be on a consent. And so anything you want to add to that?
I'm working on drafting the memo right now to request direct docketing of the item to council.
Okay. Are we able to contact Dwayne in the meantime, just to give an introduction and so forth? Does he know what the status of everything is?
Well, he sent his paperwork in, but I think we still have to wait for council approval of the contract, and then he has to sign it.
Okay. But would it be appropriate for us to maybe just set up an introductory meeting so he knows us and knows we can't talk to him at all until it's signed?
I don't believe so. I'll try to get confirmation.
Okay. Okay, and have we been successful in getting any more meetings established set up with city council members?
Alina?
So we have 2 set up right now. 2 others we're looking at on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the rest I'm still trying to get a response.
Okay, who are the 2 that, and those are probably my emails too. Who are the 2 we got set up?
It's Councilmember Kate and Councilmember Campbell.
Okay. Okay. So I'll look at my emails right after this meeting and confirm. Okay, this is down to new business. I'm sorry, unfinished business. If you could scroll down, please. Okay, so the first thing we wanted to talk about was the process for filling vacancies for interim commissioners and options of filling vacancies if that's not feasible. We talked last week about some, some basic options if the city council were to agree to an interim ordinance. But we were going to have people think about what would be a good process for proceeding if they are able to do it, so we can get the interim commissioners seated and trained as effectively and efficiently, quickly, I guess is what I'm trying to say, as possible. And then we want to have some discussions of what our options are if we're not able to fill those vacancies. So if the council decides they don't want to do a interim ordinance. So any thoughts on? I wish I can maybe prime the pump a little bit. We talked about making sure that we had community input, having people submit self-nomination forms, either directly to Charmaine or to the Office of Boards and Commissions, and then forward it to Charmaine either way. And that we would have a committee who would make recommendations to the city council. But we did not figure out who would be on that committee other than they would have community representatives. In our recommendation for the process for permanent commissioners, we suggested a process that was I think a 9-person committee, including 3 commissioners and 6 community members, and had a process for selecting who those community members would be. So we could have a similar committee this time, and then we'd have to figure out how we would select who those community members would be. So any thoughts on? I'm going to call on people if you don't respond. So Kate, if the city council agrees to allow us to fill our vacancies on the transitional committee, how would you go about making recommendations to the city council?
What do you mean? How would I go?
How would you recommend that we do it?
Well, I like the procedure that was set up for the permanent, and I think that's what I said earlier. I think what I don't remember is precisely what we said about how the community members would be chosen for the selection committee, and I think that's an open question. But you know, I think that if you have 3 CPP members and 2 or 3 community members representing certain community organizations, and if that's in place, I don't see why it can't be done fairly quickly. But I don't remember, and I guess we'd have to talk about how we come up with the community members. It's certainly not going to be just, you know, me or Women Occupy or SDJ. There's a number of many community groups who are involved in this. So so we'd have to come up with some ideas about how we sort that out, and whether people just, you know, self-nominate, we want to be, you know, the community member, or how that's going to be done. I don't know.
Okay. Well, and that's kind of, I'm trying to get an answer to it. Did anybody recall specifically what our proposal was for permanent? It seems to me it was a committee of 9 with 6 community members and 3 current or former commissioners, but I can look it up, but
I think that was right, but I think, and Patrick can probably remind us, because I know he did a lot of work on this, but I think part of what we were also looking at doing was getting a list of various community groups. And then basically it would be a rotating selection of that overall list. So it wouldn't be necessarily the same community groups every time we had a kind of new recruitment drive. But that would say you have like 10 or 15 community groups that wanted to participate, and we'd have 3 that would kind of participate in each one, or, you know, whatever the number is. But I think that was what Patrick had decided, because that way, to kind of Kate's point, we don't have the same people every single time. And that way we can give, you know, various community members a chance to be part of that process. It's kind of what I remember. I don't think we ever created you know, a detailed list. I know he had some suggestions, but I don't think we got much further than that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I remember. And, you know, certainly off the top of my head, I could come up with probably 10 groups that would be, you know, suitable, that have been involved in this process over the last 8 years, 10 years since we've been working on it. And then we could just approach those groups and see who would be interested now on an interim basis, and then, you know, somehow decide which 3 groups we're going to pick.
okay. So and we don't have to make that decision today, but I think, so there seems to be a consensus, we'll use a similar process. And the commission itself would select the community representatives. It would have a open nomination process, or any organization was interested in participating, and then we could select from those.
Yeah, I think the commission should select the organization, but not the specific individual.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Okay, and I guess that's enough for right now. And
I mean, my understanding from what I've heard Henry say is that the proposal for a standalone ordinance is not even going to be considered by PSNLN, because they're quote unquote too busy dealing with the ordinance. And now that they're not having a meeting in March, and then maybe something is coming up in April, you know, I think yet again, time is slipping by. And I think it's good and really important that the commission have something in place if and when this ordinance ever gets adopted. But I'm losing confidence that that's going to happen, and I don't really know if there are any other options. Just sort of legally. Of course, we don't have legal counsel yet to. Oh, somebody. Okay. Well, because Doug just said they weren't meeting in March, so.
no, maybe I got it backwards. Maybe I read. So they are meeting in March, but they're not meeting in April until the last part of April. So.
Well, but you said that they're considering the proposal at the April 27th meeting.
Yes, that was the first time they could get that docketed. So
they are meeting in April. In any event,
right.
I mean, I still have the same concern that, you know, this isn't even docketed. They're not even looking at talking about it. So, you know, hopefully you can get your legal counsel on board who can I would hope could figure out some other option for getting interim commissioners on outside of an ordinance.
Okay. I'm not sure there is one, but we can certainly ask.
I'm not either, but
the question.
and that's
Which
the
is
problem.
why I put on the agenda options if filling of vacancies is not feasible. Do we just plod along doing the best that we can and continue the backlog? Should we have a process for perhaps prioritizing cases?
Well, I mean, my other thought, and I mean, I guess, you know, can think about that is, you know, that PSNLN is meeting again, or no, the whole city council is meeting on the 28th, right? To discuss the ordinance and pass it on and do the authorization of a meet and confer, right?
Right.
And I think one of the talking points that we Women Occupy are thinking about raising at that full city council meeting is getting some interim commissioners on board and raising that. And so that's why we have already sent notes to all of the commissioners as well as the mayor about the importance of that. So if nothing else, it can be raised, and it can be raised openly, and it's obviously not docketed. It's not part of the ordinance. But I just think if we have to, it's in my view, it's a question of political will, and it's just being sidelined. And I really don't think that the council members understand the essence of the problem, the seriousness of the problem. And that obviously I think we have to keep raising it, but I don't know, frankly, if there are any other options other than an interim or standalone ordinance.
I mean, I believe Doug and Kate, you're correct. From my understanding is there would have to be some kind of a standalone ordinance before we would be able to add commissioners. And as we've talked about, and as I've said, you know, in our memo, my concern is that lack of attention or detail from the city council on this is going to cause more commissioners to quit. And my concern is, as we have more people who resign, it makes more work for the remaining commissioners who are already overworked as it is. And I think lack of action on behalf of the city council isn't fair to put the remaining commissioners to basically say, okay, well, now you're expected to work 40 hours a week for a volunteer job. And that's just not fair. And to be honest, you know, some of us are retired, some of us work full time, but I mean, this is a volunteer board commission, and it's not fair to expect volunteers to be putting in hours and hours. And as more people resign, the city council go, well, you guys are still functioning and you guys are doing more work, so it's okay, we're going to let it slide. And I think that's why we're trying to say that's not acceptable, because I mean, you're going to have people who quit because they can't do the amount of work that's now being expected as more people resign. So that's our concern. That's what we've raised. You know, I hope the city council listens. I would hate for them to wait till basically the commission stops functioning and then suddenly they decide to act. That's what we're afraid of.
Well, and I want to say the other part of that, obviously the community part of that, is that cases are not being reviewed because they can't be, because you're running up against the statute. And we are already starting to collect names, you know, cases that we know about that are not being reviewed or investigated or dealt with because they're running up against the statute. And that obviously is a huge concern for the community, and it completely undermines the community trust in this whole process. And the community is going to start to think that, you know, what are we doing here? Why is this process being undermined? Really, there's really no other word for it in my view. If the commission, you know, I mean, you guys want to do the good job that you do and are basically being prevented from doing that. And people are showing their trust in this new commission by having more complaints coming in. So.
Okay, Charmaine?
Yes, I keep raising my hand and lowering my hand. I'm sure if y'all saw it. But I just wanted to add to what Kate has been saying. We've also seen an increase from last month to this month. We have a number of, I believe, almost 100 active cases. And Alina, you can speak more about this. So she's been like really diligent in assigning those cases to the teams. Also, we've had a lot of complainants calling in to try to find out the status of their cases, especially if those cases are more than like 6 months. With the commissioners, people are getting frustrated. They're waiting. They want to know what the status of the case review is, and we're coming across that right now as well.
Okay, anything else people want to say on item A? Yeah, item B, selection process for the executive director. We talked about a framework last time as well. I think we had our meeting with Sean Ilo Rivera prior to the meeting, and he thought that our proposal made sense, although his recommendation was that we not tie the city council, not tie their hands, but that we give the city council open options rather than rank ordering the top 3 candidates. But beyond that, he thought that our suggested process made sense, and that process was to have a community presentation where the we would do a executive search, have the executive search firm select a certain number of finalists to do a presentation. There'd be 2 presentations, once to a group of community leaders that would be selected by the commission's community advisory board or committee. A second one would be to the commissioners themselves. There would be a selection committee, or maybe a recommendations committee is maybe a better word, that would select the top 3. That committee would be made up of commission leadership and a community representative, and then they would list the strengths and weaknesses of each of the candidates and send a report to the city council for their final selection. And Kate has her hand up.
Yeah, finally, I figured out how to do that again. I just wanted to go back to A and see if we are going to have at the next meeting the draft that was done previously for new commissioners, so that we can look at that for the proposal for filling vacancies for the interim commissioners if we ever get the ordinance. So that I really would like to be able to say to city council, the CPP is ready to go. We've got this process in place. We've got applications in, and we just need you to let us do it. So if we could have that and go over that. I mean, obviously the problem is there's not going to have another open session meeting until March for the full CPP to adopt it. But if we could at least get that in place, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, and we did not develop an operating procedure. We came up with, an outline for it, but I can include that outline in next week's minutes. But I think I got it correct, but we can put it there. Anyway, so for any new thoughts on the selection process for the executive director, we're going to raise this with city council members as we meet with them, because we want to get them to buy into the process. And as I indicated, the council president seemed comfortable with it as long as we did not rank order the finalist. And he also suggested that we look at the process that they're using for the selection of, help me with Charmaine, is it the independent budget analyst or the independent auditor that the city council is in the process of doing interviews for?
I think it was the IBA. If I remember correctly, I think it was the IBA they were talking about.
Oh, and Henry's on the line, so maybe Henry can answer that question. And I don't know if Henry can hear me or not, but what we were looking at is looking at a selection process for the executive director, and it was suggested that we look at the process that the council will be using for the selection of the independent budget analyst. Is that correct, Henry? So maybe
Charmaine just added to the chat that it's the IBA.
IBA, okay. And so we can get it more details if Henry's able to join, maybe he can give some more details of how that's going to work. But the suggestion was we model it after that process, because that's one that they already are comfortable with. Okay. Item C is the outline for the standard operating procedure for investigations. I did talk to Nancy last week, and she has agreed to continue to be on that subcommittee. She agreed to be on the subcommittee before she resigned from the ad hoc committee, and she said that she would continue to be on the subcommittee. So right now, the subcommittee will be our new outside counsel, myself and Nancy, and anybody else is welcome to join. I think Patrick would be good if I can convince him to do it. I know he's really busy. And so I don't know if anybody else had a chance to review the list of items that I came up with for last time, but people were asked to look at it and to add to it if they had anything else they wanted to add. So not seeing anybody raise their hand. I'm assuming that
Thought it was pretty thorough. I looked at it again.
okay. And Kate, did you get a chance to look at it?
I did, and I thought it was really quite remarkable. So I just want to say that again. I think somebody said that last week. I
Okay.
think it's remarkable and complete. And I didn't know if we were going to talk about the CLERB MOU around investigations at some point, but anyway, I think that's a good start. I know Andrea is very interested in the investigative process, so I don't know if it would be appropriate for me to ask her if she would be interested in being on that subcommittee. I mean, or because she's not really a member of this committee. It's up to you.
And
I don't know that she would or not.
Yeah. No, I think last time I asked her, not as a, I asked her for advice on some of the things we were talking about. So maybe we could, well, why don't you see if she'd be interested, and then we can decide how we can utilize her input.
Okay. I mean, I did send these notes out, of course, to our group and to SDJ. So she knows, so she has that, your list.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure she'd be able to give us feedback on documents we prepare. I'm not sure to what degree she would have the time to be involved in the preparation of them. I'm hoping that our new council can do most of the legwork of actually writing it. Okay, we can move on then to the case review process. And what we wanted to do was think about ways in which the new commission can do its duties without having the workload that the current commission does. And if we don't, we could end up with a similar situation, because they're going to have more cases to review than the current board does. And I personally am not convinced that our current method of reviewing cases is sustainable. I mean, I think we do a really good job of it, and we spend a lot of time working on it. But I'm not sure that it's the best use of commissioners' time, nor am I sure that the time required to do the current process is something that would be sustainable for the new commissioners, given their additional duties as well. And so, one option is to have staff do much of the legwork of reviewing the cases. And I'm not sure what that would look like. But I do know there's been quite a bit of concern about the sustainability of the current process with the new commission. And so, any thoughts on that?
Well, I thought the investigators were going to be handling most of that. We're going to be, dealing with the document reviews and interviewing witnesses and doing
for
all
the-
that sort of thing once they're in place.
For the investigations, yeah. And so, but I guess the point is we have a dual role. One
Right.
is to investigate, and yes, the investigators will write up the report, and I assume that they will write up a report somewhat similar to our current team reports for the commission to act on. So for the cases we review, that for the investigations, I don't think it will require as much additional staff time. I mean, not staff time, volunteer time, because we will simply be reviewing the report that our paid investigators did. The question is for the other cases, which will probably be 90% of our cases, we're going to continue to review and evaluate what internal affairs has done. And we could do a auditing process as opposed to a deep dive review that we currently do. Because we do an auditing process of category 2 and they don't take as much time. So we could use our category 2 model for all of our cases, and then perhaps if there is a case that a team finds issues with, they could do a deeper dive. So that's one approach. And I guess another big, broader question is: do we want to continue the same process? Do we want to have work in teams? And have teams present. Our current model is that we divide up cases amongst the teams, and the teams review and evaluate the cases and make recommendations and make a presentation and a recommendation to the full commission. Does that make sense for the new commission as well? So, Brandon, I'll call on you next.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I agree. I think once we actually have full-time staff, I mean, I think having our investigators potentially do kind of like what CLRB does, is where they do the majority of the work and then they present that to the commission and the commission asks questions and then they vote on it. I mean, I think that might make more sense. I'm open to a bunch of different ideas, for whatever people have. I mean, I kind of like the way we have it now with the team concept, where you have more than, right now we have 3 people, but you at least have more than one person reviewing each case. I think that part is pretty important in my mind. I would hate to see just one commissioner reviewing a case and then pushing that forward to the full commission. But I agree with you that I think we need to find a way to kind of reimagine how we do our case reviews to make it more efficient. And hopefully we can, leverage our full-time paid staff to help us out with that.
I like what Brandon said. I also, one of the things that I find challenging when I'm doing a case is typing in all of that stuff. The witness officers. I mean, that in itself just takes up, time that I could be using to just review the case, the whole case, rather than spending all of that time. And, and then finding and of course, we're using the abbreviated form of policy and procedure, but still you have to go and get it and you have to bring it in. It's not that like, just cut and paste kind of thing. So that for me is a killer. When I have to type up the whole report, putting in, all of the data, all of that's a killer for me. So if that could be done, when that case is given to the team, and I really like the team effort, to have all of that done. So all I have to do is just start reviewing you know, the documents and the BWC and all of that, that would be wonderful. I mean, it's just, that's like an hour, hour and a half of my time, just, you know, getting that on one screen and typing it up. That's a killer. I mean, it's a no-go sometimes. So just that.
Okay. Well, and actually, you know, we could have staff do, you know, a little bit more than that too. They could type in not just the information there, but they could type in what the allegation is.
Absolutely.
And some of the you know, other key details, and then it would be up to the team to type in whether they agreed or disagreed and what the rationale for agreeing or disagreeing was.
Right, I agree. It's just, you know, typing in the table, making the table right, then, you know, putting in, you know, all of the allegations, putting in the witness officers, the, you know, the subject officers, then typing all of that tedious information in about each of the officers. I mean, that's tedious work to me. I mean, rather than just going and pulling up the case and reviewing that work. Certainly, I can't speak for the other, you know, other commissioners, but that's my drawback, to have to do all of that clerical kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with 100%. That's why I've been pushing for a abbreviated form. But you know, having the staff you know, prepare like a skeleton form, and then have certain stuff that's still done by the team. So you have all the allegations filled in, perhaps even the IA rationale filled in, and then simply leave it for the teams to fill in their whether they agree or disagree with the IA and what the rationale was for each of the allegations. So I'm hearing that there is some. Well, I'm hearing people still want to continue having a team process of some sort, and we want to be able to utilize staff to do the clerical part of it, if you will. And you know, that may mean that we need to increase our clerical staff. Because I'm not sure who would do that work, and it would be it almost would be one person just doing all that work, wouldn't you think? And so, and I don't think that the and we could have you know, our complaints coordinator do some of that, but I think that there's a lot of stuff that complaints coordinator already does, and so I don't think that that's
It's a slight bit off topic, but I think as we talk about possibly adding new paid staff, I think it was NACOL, their rough estimate is that anywhere between 0.5% to 1% of a police department's budget should be applied towards civilian oversight. So in our case, if we were to have 0.5% of what SDPD has, we'd have just shy of a $3 million budget. So going by that number, we're way under that. Obviously, we have to make sure that we're trying to spend money appropriately, in the city, you know, is always asking to try to cut funds. But I mean, we are new. And so I think it's important for us to be able to kind of share best practices nationwide with the city council when it's coming to budgeting. But I mean, I think we need to be aware that even if you look at other areas like San Jose and San Francisco, you know, Los Angeles, they have budgets of, you know, $8 to $10 million and staff of, you know, 30 people. So as it is, we're very much under that. So I think we just, to Doug, your point is that we're looking at hiring potentially people. I can see some city council members pushing back on that, but I think we just have to be able to share with them kind of what best practices are and why we need that, because I would hate to again see that we're getting this new commission up and running, but then the budget prevents us from being able to be as effective as, you know, we could or should be.
and I'm thinking too that it may be more than just a clerical function. There could be some evaluation part of that as well. At least in terms of being able to summarize what IA's conclusions were, if that makes sense. And so it may require more training than simply transferring information from one form to another form, and so forth. But I think I'm hearing a consensus that having a staff member dedicated to doing the clerical part of the team evaluations would help with the workload issue. And does everybody agree that probably would take a full-time staff member? I think if you take all of the time that we spend ourselves doing the clerical part of it and add that all up, you're going to have that.
Well, I think to your point, I would say I think a full-time person is probably appropriate, because if you think of how much time each team currently puts in and you times that by 7, that's how much work's going to be there. So I think a full-time person would probably be needed for it.
So, okay. So I think it's too late for this year to put it in our budget, but we probably won't have a, the new commission up and running fully. We still have some time in order to do that, so I think we can build that into the next fiscal year's budget to have a staff person to do that. And again, we're going to be making recommendations for the permanent standard operating procedures. We wanted to come up with a recommendation. We want to leave it to the new commission to finalize those procedures, because it'll be their procedures. So I think we can leave it at that. Maybe we can give some more thought as to what that process would look like. And I also would be interested in getting Patrick's input as well, because he's the one who is championing this issue. But I like the approach of kind of keeping the same process of having teams review and present, but have the outline for the report prepared by a staff member, so that all the teams have to do is watch the body-worn camera, listen to the interviews, and look at the other relevant evidence, and then indicate, based on their review, whether they agree or disagree with the findings. Okay. I see that Tiffany has joined us as well. And I don't know whether either Henry or Tiffany can answer the previous question that we had, but the question, or the suggestion that was made, was that we recommend a similar process for the selection of the executive director that the council is using for the selection of the independent budget analyst. And we're wondering what that process is. I'm not hearing a response, so perhaps they're just monitoring and aren't able to respond right now.
Hi,
But I'll get that.
this is Tiffany Harrison. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to my mute button. I can check and see. Your question is it possible to mirror the process that the IBA is using to recruit their new director, for the executive director for CPP, correct?
Correct, because my understanding of that is a council appointment. Is that correct?
I can go back and verify.
Okay, and so if you could verify that and let us know where we can find information on what that process is, so that we could perhaps mirror that, that would be perfect. Thank you for your help.
Okay, and I see that Henry has his hand raised. He may have
Okay.
some additional input.
Okay, Henry,
Yes, to answer your question, the process is actually, the IBA's process is actually mirroring what we did for the recruitment for the director of the Office of Race and Equity. So the way that recruitment and interview process went, there was what we call a technical panel, which is developed or includes specific internal city department type individuals. And then you have a community type panel that is more community based.
okay. And is the outline of that process written down anywhere, do you know?
It is not.
Okay, and so let me see if I can, and then they made recommendations, but in that case, it was the recommendation to the mayor though, right?
Excuse me?
Was that a mayoral appointment?
For the Office of Race and Equity, yes.
Okay, then this would be a city council appointment. But the IBA, is that a council appointment?
Correct, but it is not uncommon for positions on the mayoral side, and as we're doing it on the IBA side, to have community folks sitting on the panel. Oftentimes it can be both ways. It can be a panel that is one panel that includes community seats, or it could be two panels where it's a city panel and then a community panel. It just depends on how the appointing, I'm gonna use the term appointing authority, how they want to proceed with that process.
Okay, we're good, because that's kind of what we were thinking. We were thinking of having actually a three-step process. One would be to have a community panel, for lack of a better term, where they would make a presentation and they would give feedback using feedback forms prepared by HR. And then they would do a similar presentation, with question and answers to the full commission, and they would also do a feedback form. And then we would have a recommendations committee, which would review all of those feedback forms, conduct their own interviews, and make recommendations to the city council with the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate, and the city council would then make the final selection. For the IBA, does the city council interview the candidates, and how do they do that?
Yes.
Okay. And then they make their selection, and is it in closed session or is it an open session?
I believe it is closed session.
Okay.
It is handled as a personnel matter.
Okay. And so we could then have our recommendations committee recommend the top three to the city council. The city council can then conduct their interviews and select the individual they want to hire.
It sounds like you're asking me a question. Again, I would have to defer to the appointing authority.
Right.
And how the process will work.
Right. We're just trying to get some sense of whether or not we're on the right path, and it sounds like we are. And because we wanted to suggest two things. We want to amend the ordinance which created the Office of the Commission on Police Practices to specify that the commission itself has the ability to make recommendations to the city council, and also to require that there be a operating procedure for making those recommendations. And so we wanted to give the council, in making that request, a idea of what we envision that operating procedure to look like. And so that's why we were asking for your feedback and information. So
again, I'm not in the position to provide it at this point, but as I have stated before, and I can appreciate that there's nothing stated in the current ordinance in regards to the commission making a recommendation, but I would say that there's nothing that precludes you from making that recommendation.
Right.
And so at this point, if that is something that you desire to do, then I would recommend that the body take action and make said recommendation.
Okay. And we will be doing that. And we wanted to be prepared, I guess, is when we're asked what that process would look like, we would like to be able to respond as to what we envision that process looking like. So.
And
Okay.
I think in order to be in a position to provide a response, I think the appointing authority would have to be identified, and then they would outline that process and then could provide that feedback.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, the appointing authority in this case is the city council.
What's that?
I mean, the appointing authority is the city council, correct?
Well, the city council has, the city council does have the appointment, that does hold the appointment authority, but when it comes to the actual interviewing process and convening the panel, the individual that is actually going to head that panel will deter. I defer to, I'm calling them the appointing authority for that specific process.
Okay.
And they will determine what those processes are. What is different with this council is, of course, there's been open discussions at council regarding the process for the IBA. So I would assume that the current council president may follow something similar to that. But again, I would have to defer to the council president. I don't want to speak on his behalf. But you know, if you look at what is happening currently, there is an effort to be more transparent in the process of things such as this.
Okay, perfect. That's helpful, Henry. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And like I said, when we meet with individual council members, we will share our thoughts with them. And so we want to get their feedback before we bring forth a specific proposal to the city council. And so that is on our agenda to do after the implementation ordinance is taken care of. And the last item is a carryover of the list of the different federal, state, and reporting requirements. We have not heard back from Captain Jordan, have we, Brandon? Do you mind following up with him? Because I kind of got the impression he was going to get back to us like within a week or so. And
Yeah, I'll
okay, and so if we can go down to the okay. So new business and presentation to the city council regarding implementations for the implementation ordinance. So that meeting of the city council is going to be on the 28th. And our next commission meeting is going to be on the 22nd. And so we need to discuss what we want to present to the city council on the 28th and who will be doing that presentation. And one thing that I did want to include is enhanced language regarding what the records that'll be available to the commission would be. And if you can scroll down past the minutes, please. Okay, and there were two things that came to mind. One was, well, the most recent version of the ordinance did include some of the stuff we asked for with regard to records being unredacted and so forth. A concern that I still have is that I want to make sure that if we are, especially when we're reviewing policies and practices of the department, that if there is data that they have, that be available to the commission, regardless of whether or not it's been compiled into a report. And so for example, say we were going to be making a recommendation or studying the issue of pretext stops, and we wanted to get certain types of data. They may not have a report on that, but we could request the data. So I want to make sure that when it says you can request records, that it includes data. And then when we met with Council President Elo Rivera, he suggested that we look at the city auditor language with regard to what information they're able to access. And so I looked at the city charter, and I put the first paragraph you show on the screen there is what the city is taken. It's not the entire part of the charter, but it's a paragraph from it, which talks about the authority that they have to access records and documents, systems and files. And I like that language, records, documents, although I would think a document is a record. Systems and files kind of gets to what I was thinking of. And then if you scroll down or scroll up a little bit, I guess scroll down. I took the language from the independent auditor, and I kind of replaced CPP for the auditor and modified it to reflect the authority of the commission. And so my suggestion would be that we would ask that the two sections which talk about the cooperation of city employees and the section on records be enhanced to include language that is similar to the access given to the city auditor. And here's what I came up with. I'll just go ahead and read it. It says the Commission on Police Practices must have access to and authority to examine any and all records, documents, systems, and files of any city department, office, or agency directly related to a matter within the Commission's jurisdiction. It is a duty of any officer, employee, or agent of the city having control of such records to permit access to and examine thereof upon the request of the Commission. It is the duty of any such officer, employee, or agent to fully cooperate with the Commission and to make full disclosure of all pertinent information. In fulfilling the duties and powers of the Commission as enumerated in Section 26.1107, the Commission may summon any officer, agent, employee, or employee of the city to examine him or her upon oath or affirmation. There too. And so that's a little bit more forceful language than is in the current ordinance. And then the second thing I put there was I think the thing we're missing with return to the record section is making sure that all data and information collected by the city, regardless of whether it is in a document, is considered to be a record. And I see Henry's hand up.
I'm sorry. I don't think I took it up the last time.
Okay. So any thoughts on this?
I think it's good. I like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And so then I will entertain, I guess in this small committee, the chair can make a motion. So I would make a motion that we recommend to the commission that they recommend to the city council that they incorporate this or similar language into the final implementation ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay. And
I agree.
okay, I think I can just take the roll since we're a small group. There's only 3 of us voting today, and I'm voting yes since I made the motion. And Brandon?
I'll vote yes.
And Diana?
Yes.
Okay. And then anything else? We did Kate mentioned, and I agree, that even though it's not part of the action the council will be considering on February 28th, that we should, in public comment, reference a forthcoming request. And there are two forthcoming requests. One is to have a standalone ordinance to fulfill vacancies on the interim commission. And the second is to amend the municipal ordinance that talks about the Office of Boards and Commissions to include the ability of the commission to make recommendations to the city council. And Kate has her hand up, but I'll go to Kate first, and then I may have another item I want to suggest as well. But Kate.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Henry if and when we will know about any amendments that are going to be submitted on the 28th. We've been told that there's going to be at least one amendment, and we kind of wondered when we would know that, or if it's just in the standard agendized timeline.
I'm sorry. We have sent in all of our information to through the docketing process. Once the items are docketed and the agenda is released, then that information will be made available to the public. I don't have a date going through the process.
But as I understand, amendments can also be made, like, I guess I'm going to say from the floor, like immediately, right? Also on the 28th. Is that accurate?
Question or a statement?
That's a question.
I do believe at the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee meeting that there were amendments made on the floor and they were accepted. So I would assume that that same process could take place as well. That's a legal question for an attorney.
Okay, and then is there, and I don't know what amendments are being proposed. It'll be in the docket. But are there any other issues we want to take a position on? If not, I'll raise an issue that I know has been raised in other venues, that MC's Mid-City Community CAN group. I forget what their initials stand for. Mid-City, is it Community CAN?
Mid-City CAN, Community Action Network, Mid-City CAN.
Okay, is requesting that the youth commissioners receive compensation. And I don't know whether that needs to go into the ordinance or not.
I'd have to go back and double check, but I remember at least in one of the versions, the charter amendment, I believe, clearly stated all commissioners are volunteer. And I don't know if that's what made it into the final, but I remember seeing that somewhere, and I get where they're coming from, but I'm a little concerned of having two different classes of commissioners, some paid, some unpaid. I think that's problematic.
And I forget that, I looked in the most recent draft ordinance. I did not see that, but I didn't look in the charter. And if the charter says that they are not compensated, the city council can't change that. And I don't have handy to look at. Do you happen to know, Henry, regardless of whether what would be required to provide compensation for any of the commissioners, and whether it would require an ordinance or whether it's even possible to do?
I'd have to review the charter.
And so, I'm thinking maybe maybe the commission can be silent on that and let other people raise that issue. I understand the concept, especially for the youth members, and I think it makes some sense, but I also share Brandon's thought of, the compensation is provided because it's needed, I guess, is, which is an income level, and there could be commissioners that have equal financial needs as to the youth members, and there could be other members who are in the same age range as the designated youth members, and I don't know whether they would be included in that as well. And so I don't know if anybody here wants to make a motion. I kind of like the idea, but I'm kind of thinking that we don't have the details of what would be required to make that happen. And because there are some equity issues that maybe we ought to just let others make that request.
I would prefer to stay silent, I think.
Right. I agree with Brandon. I thought this was, covered and addressed quite a while ago, that this was an all volunteer board. So the idea of compensation to our youth is, I think doing some stepping back, because I really believe in our discussions before, that this was an all volunteer board. So.
And I'll double check the city charter, because I know there's a couple different versions that went through, but I'm almost positive. Well, I remember reading somewhere that it very clearly stipulated that we were a volunteer commission. Now, whether or not that's what made it into the final draft or the final document, I don't know. So I'll take a look. I'll try to do some research and see what it says.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to recommend in our so Henry, when will the docket be posted for the 28th?
I do not have an answer for that.
Okay. So I guess if it's posted by the 22nd, if there's anything in there that the commission wants to weigh in on, we can do it on the 22nd. But is there any other item or items that we want to have addressed? Okay, so the only thing I'm hearing is we wanted to request the strengthening of the documents, and we want to mention that we will be bringing forward recommendations on the selection process for the executive director, and a request for an ability to make additional interim appointments on the commission until the permanent commission is established.
I have a question. I just can't remember. Has the commission already weighed in on the criminal conviction exclusion? I think there's going to be an amendment about that, but it's going through several processes.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question that I did, because I think one of the likely amendments may be that section on the criminal amendments. As you will recall, we got the corrected language, the most recent language, which modified the felony conviction language after, just hours after the commission last met. So the commission has not weighed in on the changes that were made there. I will say that some of the changes that were made addressed some of the concerns that the commission had. But I don't know whether the commission is comfortable with the current draft, and I'm suspecting there's going to be another draft that may end up, unfortunately, coming after the 22nd. And so, Kate, what's your?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been told, is that there's going to be another revision, but we don't know what it's going to be. And I guess I don't know. I don't think I sent it to you folks, but I'm sure people saw the Voice of San Diego article where they did a survey of 30 jurisdictions, basically none of which have such an exclusion in their on their oversight commission. And it continues to be a major issue, obviously. And even with the revision that there's sort of, a way that people can rehabilitate themselves, that's kind of not the point. So I know that there's going to be community input on that. And that's why I was hoping that we could see the amendments enough in time so that we could comment on whatever that amendment might be. But I couldn't remember, frankly, if the commission had taken a position on that ban. And of course, it's not just felonies, it's felonies and certain misdemeanors. So, and then people can rehabilitate.
Right.
So anyway, so that answers my
well,
question, that there has not been a formal position taken by the commission.
Yeah, we took a position opposing the language of the January 11th document, but we did not have an opportunity to take a position on the January 20th document. But we could.
Well,
But again-
except that we know that there's something
Exactly.
coming and it's still a secret, so we don't know what it is. I guess at some point we'll find out.
So how do we proceed on that, or do we?
I think it kind of depends on what the amendment's going to be, to be honest. I mean, until we know what that is, we can't. I mean, the commission did make some recommendations on what we thought that should be. What was currently in the draft is not lining up with what the commission recommended. But I think until we see or we know what the potential revision is, I think we're kind of stuck at making a comment. I mean, I guess we could restate what our previous recommendation was. But other than that, I'm not sure what really we can do right now.
Well, I guess what we could do is when this item comes up on the commission agenda on Tuesday, if we have the new language, we can present it and get feedback from the full commission. If we don't have the new language, we can read the exceptions that were made and see if there were any comments regarding the revised language, or if there were any concerns that were raised there, and then empower the so I know best we can do is take a position on the most currently available language. So why don't we just leave that for the commission to discuss on Tuesday? If just to refresh people's memory, the language that was inserted after it talks about the felony exclusions, it says that an applicant or nominee can be considered if they satisfy any of the following conditions. They can demonstrate they're no longer on probation or parole and have satisfied a minimum of rehabilitation continuously for a period of 5 years or longer. They present a certificate of rehabilitation in accordance with the California Penal Code. Or C, they present a court order demonstrating that the conviction has been overturned, expunged, dismissed, or a court has issued any other post-conviction relief that modifies the conviction so that it no longer fits within the categories set forth above. And so, both B and C are addressed issues that were raised at the commission last time. But anyway, so I think probably the best we can do is have the commission react to whatever language is available on Tuesday night and give their feedback on it. And Henry has the hand raised again, I think.
Yeah, I just want to clarify from the form that was done by our office, as it was indicated in that form, the council president pro tem, Hold on.
That's all Ariel now.
The council president pro tem is proposing to align the criminal background provisions with Senate Bill 310, which was stated in that meeting for jury service. And specifically, if you pull that statute, it's item number 5, item number 9, item number 10, and item number 11 from that statute. So you will see that in the proposed language that will be released once the item is docketed to and available for the public.
Okay, yeah. Two things that reminded me, do we, is that recording of the community forum available yet? Because I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing.
I'm not sure. I will have to check with Tiffany.
And could either you or Tiffany give me the language of the bill you just referenced in those sections?
I will drop in the chat the link to the Senate bill.
Okay. And do you mind repeating for me what the sections, relevant sections are?
Hold on, let me finish this. And then you can actually bring it up if you want. Oops. So it's item number 5, 9, 10, and 11.
5, 9, 10, and 11, and that's Senate Bill 310.
So Henry, just so I understand, because I was reading those are the only criteria that you're going to have as exclusions. Is that correct?
Yes, for felony convictions, yes.
Got it.
We are still including the items that were what we call the administrative items. If there's any misuse of office or any misuse of records, things like that. So
Got it.
as far as convictions, that's what is being proposed.
Okay, so 5 is persons who have been convicted of malfeasance in office whose civil rights have not been restored. Persons while they are incarcerated in the prison or jail. Persons who have been convicted of a felony and are currently on probation, post release, community supervision, felony probation, and mandated supervision for the conviction of a felony. And 11 persons who are currently required to register as a sex offender pursuant to the sections listed there. Okay, then what we can do is if the amendment is not available by Tuesday, we can reference those 4 things and indicate that's forthcoming and get feedback on that as well. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, and then as indicated, we can also decide then who's going to give the presentation on behalf of the commission. As I indicated, I'm going to be out of town on the day of the city council hearing, and most likely will not be able to join that meeting. And there is a process now for having organized presentations, which Charmaine sent out, so we can decide who's going to make presentation and get some volunteers to present the issues we want to raise. Okay, then hold on just 1 second here.
Kate has her hand up, by the way.
Okay, Kate, to go ahead.
Is the CPP was invited to make an organized presentation, or can other groups request making an organized presentation? Do you know?
I think any group can make an organized presentation. There's some new guidelines for doing so, which Charmaine sent out to us. Charmaine, do you mind forwarding those to Kate?
Thank you.
Okay. And hold on just 1 more second, please. Okay. And then so for agenda items next week, I guess we can discuss the items of unfinished business and get a report from the city council meeting. Are there any other items?
The city council meeting won't have happened by next Friday. Or is next Friday being
Oh,
canceled?
you're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. You're right. So let me ask this question, since I will be out of town. That's when I leave to go out of town, is on Friday morning. Is there a need to meet next Friday?
I think we could probably skip it. But I mean, if we decide to have it, I can do the meeting in your absence. Just as a heads up, I will be out the following week. So, but yeah, I think we could probably skip it if we wanted to, but I'd leave it up to, I guess, Diana. You're the tiebreaker, I suppose.
I'm okay with either one. It doesn't matter.
Okay, then why don't we plan on skipping it unless something comes up that requires that we act more immediately. And then on the 4th, I have some obligations that day. It's the California Democratic Convention. It's a virtual convention, but they haven't given us the final schedule yet, so I don't know if anything I need to attend will conflict with the transition committee meeting, and so we can decide that later. So I may request that we change the day or time of the meeting on March 4th, but right now we'll just keep it on the agenda.
Yeah, I have a conflict the morning of the 4th also. I would not be able to attend the morning of the 4th. I have a court hearing.
Okay, then let's play that one by ear. And maybe are you available in the afternoon, Kate?
Yes, it's just a morning hearing.
Okay, then let's play it by ear on the 4th. We have some time on that. And for next week, we'll cancel it unless something comes up between now and next week that we think we need to take some more immediate action on. And with that, I think we're done. If there's any other items of concern.
I'm good.
Okay, then I say we adjourn. Thank you.
See you guys. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.